And should we start?
Yeah, Bismillah.
Okay. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. So we are in the last 10 nights of Ramadan. And I think a lot of us are hearing similar messages about taking advantage of the last 10 nights. And I thought maybe I'll talk about an act of worship that is not necessarily physical, but it might bring our attention to the group of worship or the acts of worship that are done by the heart and that we can do anywhere, anytime. You don't have to be in a particular place or location. And this is about realizing, looking at our responsibilities in life and realizing where we have a lack and how to basically remedy and try and basically take up the responsibility we're supposed to do. Now, some people think this is kind of worldly, it's not religious, but as we're going to see today, inshallah, it's not the case. And in order to illustrate this point, I want to bring the story of one of the prophets of Allah. Now, if I were to ask, who do you think was the first prophet mentioned to Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam? As we know in the Quran, it's full of stories of prophets before Prophet Muhammad. And some people might think it's Adam because he's the first prophet. Some people might think, well, maybe it's one of the great prophets, ulul azm, as we call them, like Prophet Nuh or Ibrahim or Musa or Isa. But if you examine the order of revelation, you'd notice that one of the first surahs revealed was Surah Al-Qalam. So Surah Al-Qalam is revealed or was revealed after Surah Al-Alaq. So it was revealed early on, most likely in the first year of the prophethood. And we all know Surah Al-Qalam is in the 29th juz of the Quran. It is the second surah after Surah Al-Mulk. And it's not a big surah. It's just about 2.5 pages, maybe 3 pages, depending on the copy you have. And there you see the first mention of a prophet. So most likely, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ heard the story of Yunus ﷺ from all prophets. Most likely, he heard the story of Prophet Yunus ﷺ before other prophets. It doesn't mean that he did not know about other prophets, but I'm talking about as far as we know from the revelation order. It seems like the story of Yunus ﷺ was the first story to be revealed in the Quran. And that begs the question, what is so unique, what is so special about the Prophet Yunus ﷺ and his story, and why is it relevant to us today? That's really the question. And how can we connect it to Ramadan and the last 10 nights of Ramadan? Now, if you read, and Prophet Yunus is not mentioned too many times in the Quran, he's mentioned maybe like 3 times, but this is one of the interesting passages about Prophet Yunus alayhi salam. What you see in the at the end of Surah Al-Qalam, it's intriguing because here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding Prophet Muhammad not to follow the example of Yunus alayhi salam. Now, usually when the Quran talks about other prophets, it commands the Prophet Muhammad to follow their example. And it says in a different surah, فَبِهُدَاهُ مُقْتَدِهِ, like follow their guidance. So usually the expected command after a story of a prophet is to follow the prophet. But here, interestingly, and this is in the beginning of the prophet's you could say career as a prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him, do not follow the example of Yunus alayhi salam. So he said, فَاصْبِرْ لِحُكْمِ رَبِّكَ وَلَا تَكُنْ كَصَاحِبِ الْحُوتِ. So be patient with the order, the command, the decree of your Lord, and do not be like the companion of the whale or the fish, the big fish. when he yelled or he screamed in darkness. إِذْ نَادَى وَهُوَ مَكْظُومٌ, and he was also inhibited, right? He could not go anywhere. He was stuck, if you will. He was stuck in the belly of the whale. لولا أن تداركه نعمة من ربه. If it weren't for the mercy of his Lord and the bounty of his Lord, لنبذ بالعراء وهو مذموم. He would have been thrown out into the open land, the open desert, and he would have been, not taken care of, مذموم. He would have been also casted out. فاجتباه ربه فجعله من الصالحين. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, he chose him, he selected him because he's a prophet. All the prophets of Allah are selected. Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala command Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam not to take after the example of Yunus alayhi salam? Who was Yunus? Who was Prophet Yunus after all? Well, Prophet Yunus alayhi salam was a great prophet. And there's a hadith, interestingly, because people should not get the impression that Prophet Yunus alayhi salam should be looked down upon. When Prophet Muhammad was asked about Prophet Yunus, he said, "Do not say I'm better than Yunus." This is the Prophet alayhi salam. This is later, of course. He said, "Do not say that I am better than Yunus bin Matta." So this is from the etiquette, how we deal with the prophets. Just because we read something in the Quran that says something like that, that might imply some negative aspect, it should never come to our minds. It should never come across that we should think that a prophet is not good or that other prophets are better than him. We're not in this game of comparing prophets, okay? It's not something good to do anyways. So who was Prophet Yunus alayhi salam? Well, Prophet Yunus was sent to Nineveh, or Nainawa in Arabic, which is today's Mosul. So if you go to Iraq, and the northern province is where you see basically the area of Mosul. And in the old days, it used to be called Nineveh or Nainawa in Arabic. It was a thriving city at the time because it was the middle of civilization. And no doubt, Prophet Yunus alayhi salam was faced with a great challenge to go to a big city, and he's by himself, and to basically go and call them to a new message that they were not familiar with. Most likely, it would go against their idols and their old bad habits and all of that. So obviously, he's going to face a lot of challenge. But Prophet Prophet Yunus alayhi salam still tried, but it seems like he quit a bit too early. We don't know the exact reason. The Quran tells us he got upset, he got angry. Mughadiban, it says, like he was angry. Now we don't know if he was angry with his people. Maybe he lost hope in them. Maybe he was angry with himself because he was not able to convey the message as he would like of. So regardless, he made a decision, and the decision seemed to have been early, maybe without the consent of God. He made the decision to leave his people. Now, of course, he left the city, and then he went and he took to the sea, and he was on board a ship. And there was a mighty storm. And for some reason, the people on the ship had a superstitious belief. They thought that they have to get rid of one person. They thought maybe that person is bringing the evil or the wrath of the gods, and they had to get rid of that person. So they would cast a lot, and the first time Yunus's name comes up, and then he try again. Same name comes up, Yunus alayhi salam. Third time, Yunus comes up. So they decide that Yunus is the source of their trouble. He's the one causing the gods to be angry with them, and that's why there's a storm. So they basically pick Yunus up and throw him in the sea. Now, no doubt it was a storm. Of course, it was dark. Usually storms bring darkness. And then on top of that, a whale came and swallowed Yunus alayhi salam. So that's a darkness upon darkness. That's why in the Quran, it says, Nada fi dhulumat. Now, if you were to translate dhulumat, you might say darknesses. I don't think in English you can have a plural of darkness, but you can say layers of darkness. That's really how you translate it. So there were layers and layers of darkness upon Yunus alayhi salam. You could say the darkness of the clouds and the storm, the darkness of the sea, and the darkness of the belly of the whale. Of course, in that moment, Yunus alayhi salam uh, had an epiphany, you could say, right? Came to a realization. He realized that maybe he made a mistake. And of course, the type of mistakes the prophets make is not the same as the mistakes we think of. It's not like kind of like the sins we think of, right? But the standard of the prophets is obviously higher than our standard. So he starts making this dua, which is very, very, in a way, it's a bit odd. And at the same time, it's very amazing. It's a dua we still say today, and it's an amazing dua. And it's not actually, Prophet Yunus alayhi salam is not asking for anything. I mean, if you look in this dua, there's no ask. So it's kind of weird in a way. So he said, La ilaha illa anta subhanak, inni kuntu min al-zalimin. And by the way, if you examine lots of the Prophet's dua, it's not like a page long of what you want from Allah. This is our dua. The Prophet's dua was very simple, and there's usually a hint in the dua. And this is from the etiquettes of calling upon Allah. I say this because we're in the last 10 nights, and I know dua is going to be very important on everybody's mind, right? So these are some etiquettes of making dua properly. So all it says, I mean, there's an introduction to the dua, of course, the dhikr, like he's mentioning God, right? This is always good to have in a dua, to not just start with the dua, but you start with glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before you make a dua. So that is, number one. So he makes two dhikr, la ilaha illallah, we all know, and subhanallah, to summarize. And then he says, I am from the oppressors. Now, again, by our standards, Yunus did not necessarily, I mean, he did not oppress anyone, right? In fact, if anything, we think he's a victim, right? He tried his best, his people rejected him. So obviously, in our standard, he's a victim. But the thing about Yunus alayhi salam, which I think strikes a chord with all of us, and we do this all the time in our lives, and we don't pay attention to, is that sometimes we face a challenge, we face a difficulty, and we quit too soon. And we say, the best way is to run away, and I'll start a new life, or I'll have a new beginning. So for example, some people might quit on their friends. Some people might quit on their commitments. Some people might quit on their own families. You see some fathers do that. Some people might even quit on their own lives, and they commit suicide. It's not a trivial matter. This is not to trivialize or to make little of this challenge. We all face challenges in life. And a common reaction from many people is to turn away and say, I'm too weak for this. I cannot face this. I'm going to go and I'll do something else. And that responsibility somehow magically will disappear. Well, guess what? It doesn't disappear. And guess what? Life does not get easier. Just like for Yunus alayhi salam, it didn't get easier. Yes, he went away from his people, but he ended up in the belly of the whale. So the question I want to leave with you tonight, inshallah, is what kind of whale are you in? What kind of whale am I in? This whale does not have to be a physical whale. It could be the whale of addiction. It could be the whale of anxiety and fear. It could be the whale of extremism. It could be the whale of pornography. There are many types of whale, and each one of us might be stuck in one. And sometimes you may not acknowledge it, sometimes you may not realize it. But now is the time to not only realize what kind of rut we're in, but also to make an effort. In the month of Ramadan is the best time to face our fears and to say, maybe I should not have run from that commitment. Maybe I should not have run from that responsibility. And maybe I can use the example of Yunus alayhi salam. Just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminded Prophet Muhammad, because Prophet Muhammad in the beginning alayhi salam was facing mighty challenges. Everybody was rejecting him. Everybody was making fun of him and mocking him. No doubt it could have been appealing to him to run away from all of it. So that's why the story was revealed. And that's why the story of Yunus is very, very important to Prophet Muhammad, but it is also important to all of us because all of us face challenges like that in life. So, and one of the ways, one of the things we can do, inshallah, and I'll end, I'm out of time. One of the things we can do in the last 10 nights is to repeat the dua of Yunus alayhi salam. Go and find what kind of whale you're stuck in, and then make the sincere dua. Acknowledge that you are an oppressor, not that you are a victim. If you're gonna keep thinking that you're a victim, and start blaming people left and right and blaming everybody else except you, you'll never solve any problem. And this is not the message of Ramadan. This is not the message of the last 10 nights. And this is not the message of Islam. But to acknowledge that you made a mistake, that you own the problem, and that you're gonna own the solution as well. And you start with it tonight and the coming nights. And one of the dua, you can add to your dua repository, if you will. One of the du'as you should be repeating, and it's very short, very simple, to the point. La ilaha illa anta subhanak inni kuntu min al-zalimin. Once you acknowledge that you've made some oppression, maybe toward your parents, maybe toward your kids, maybe toward your colleagues, maybe toward a commitment, it doesn't have to be an individual. Now you are on the way to solving your problem, inshallah. So we can turn these nights into nights of reflection and also, of course, of solution, inshallah. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow me and all of us to realize our pitfalls, our oppressions, and to go back to our commitments and to face our fears and to make these prophets our examples. Ameen. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.